Morning everyone. Let's zoom in on one of the key quotations from the play and see what it can tell us. It's Act 1 Scene 5 and the quotation is "Look like the innocent flower, but be the serpent under it." So Lady Macbeth has decided that the quickest route to the throne is to murder King Duncan. So in Act 1 Scene 5, she's trying to convince her husband that this is the right thing to do. She says you need to act how they expect you to act, but you should look like the innocent flower, but be the serpent under it. Meaning, you should look innocent to people's faces, but you should be prepared to be cunning and deadly in secret. Essentially, I want you to be two-faced, to be duplicitous, to be deceitful. First off, you have the imperative verbs of look and be, showing that Lady Macbeth is the one in command here. Look up the roles and expectations of women at this time in society to see why Lady Macbeth giving orders to her husband is atypical. Now, if we look specifically at the imagery, the two words that stick out to us are flower and serpent. So we could zoom in to the connotations of these two nouns. So let's start with the flower simile. Flowers stereotypically are seen as feminine, particularly so in the Jacobean period that Shakespeare was writing in. So by saying, "look like the innocent flower," Lady Macbeth could be telling her husband to look unassuming, quiet, gentle, and calm. Stereotypically, women of the period were supposed to act as delicate pacifists, and that's how she wants Macbeth to act. A bit of a reoccurring theme for Lady Macbeth is to discuss her husband's masculinity, or lack of it. And she says, look like the innocent flower, not be the flower. Essentially, she wants him to be false and deceiving. Now, flowers also have connotations of life, ironic considering the nature of Lady Macbeth's plans for Duncan, and it could be said that flowers are attractive, so perhaps she's telling Macbeth to radiate positivity and purity, attracting Duncan closer so that, like a Venus flytrap, they can pounce. Yet, the innocence aspect means that they would not be suspected. The image of the peaceful, innocent flower is somewhat juxtaposed by the image of a deadly serpent. Notice how Shakespeare doesn't write "be the wolf" or "be the lion." He picks the word serpent specifically for its range of connotations, pretty much all of which are negative. So serpents are reptiles, cold-blooded creatures that have evolved over millennia to be ruthless, uncaring and efficient killers. The venomous side of serpents tells us that they're deadly, and Lady Macbeth wants her husband to be the serpent, to be ruthless and merciless in his betrayal of the king. And speaking of betrayal, that's another connotation of snakes. This idea of backstabbing, conniving and treachery is often associated with serpents, such as the playground insult of calling someone a snake. And this seems to stem from the treachery of the snake in the Bible. In the book of Genesis, the cunning serpent is presented as deceptive. It tells us that God said Adam and Eve can eat the fruit of any tree from the Garden of Eden, but that they should not eat the fruit from the tree of knowledge of good and evil. This is the forbidden fruit. And a serpent turns up and tells Eve that if they do eat it, their eyes will be opened and they shall be as gods. So Eve eats it, she gives some to Adam, who eats it, and God is furious and punishes them after he finds out that the serpent deceived them. Now, whether you believe in the story or not is another matter, but in the highly religious Jacobean period of the early 17th century, you can bet that these connotations come to mind in the charged word of serpent. Now, what's this got to do with Macbeth? Well, Macbeth is a story about the temptation of power, as is the story of Adam and Eve. Knowing the outcome of the forbidden fruit story also foreshadows that if Macbeth takes the role of the serpent under it, both Macbeth and Lady Macbeth will be punished for it, just like Adam and Eve were. Essentially, the murder of Duncan is the eating of the apple. Lady Macbeth tempts Macbeth into doing it, showing her manipulative and sinful side, and it ultimately leads to the downfall of both of them. Now add to this that in the book of Revelations, it tells us that the serpent from the story was actually Satan in disguise. The word serpent then comes loaded with the connotations of the ultimate evil, death and punishment. We could take it that Lady M wants her husband to be ready to commit acts of evil, such as the murder of a man he's sworn to protect. Or, if we consider that Satan, the devil, is a fallen angel who was cast out of heaven, perhaps the act of killing Duncan will lead to the downfall of the brave and noble Macbeth. Now, there are absolutely loads of other connotations of serpents. I mean, just look at mythology. The hair of the Gorgons and Medusa, Cerberus, the three-headed dog who has a snake for a tail and a serpentine mane, or even the symbolism of the serpent in the modern-day symbol for doctors. So there are loads of other avenues that you could go down when looking at the connotations of the word serpent. These are just a few. Now, I get it. Maybe you're thinking that flowers and serpents were the first thing that popped into Shakespeare's head and there's no real significance to them at all. Bear with me. Consider that when the Scottish King James ascended to the throne of England and Scotland in 1603, Shakespeare's acting group changed their name to the King's Men because James I became their patron. In 1605, there was a foiled assassination attempt of James. A bunch of Catholics tried to blow up Parliament while the King was inside. And we refer to this each year on the 5th of November on Bonfire Night. Now, in order to commemorate the foiled plot, James I had a medal made. On the medal was the image of a serpent underneath a bunch of flowers, meant to represent the deception and treachery. So it was something that was a bit of a hot topic in the news at the time. And the next year, Shakespeare wrote a play about the assassination of a Scottish king and writes that the wife of the assassin tells him to look like the innocent flower but be the serpent under it. Probably not a coincidence. Now, if we take today's quotation and a few others, we can see that there's a reoccurring theme in Macbeth, that of how appearances are deceiving, or how things look versus how they actually are. Add to this the three hallucinations of the floating dagger, Banquo's ghost, and the blood on Lady Macbeth's hands, and it's clear that this theme runs throughout the entire play. The question you would need to answer in your responses is why you believe Shakespeare chose to make this a reoccurring theme. Why include all of these themes of deception and betrayal and references to it? What would it add to the play? And what effect would he want this to have on his targeted audience? And that's all for today's video. If you found it useful, a like or a comment would really help the channel grow. Thanks for watching and happy revising.